Chapter 6. Chapter 6. Chapter 6. The legacy of the British organization, direction and control of police force. The legacy of the British organization, direction and control of police force. The legacy of the British organization, direction and control of police force. General organization. General organization. According to Bombay Police Manual 1927, the police force of each district formed a unit which was directed and regulated by the district superintendent, who was subordinate to the district magistrate, commissioner, range deputy inspector general, and the inspector general. Each district was subdivided into a certain number of subdivisions. Each under a subdivision officer consisted ordinarily of a group of talukas, except where a single taluka or town was of sufficient importance to form a separate subdivision. In most subdivisions, there were subdivisional inspectors to supervise crime work. Each subdivision contained a number of police stations with such outposts under each as were necessary. Although small outposts were sometimes indispensable, they were not unnecessarily scattered over a district and were always placed under responsible control. Inspector General, Range, Deputy Inspector General, Commissioner, District Magistrate, District Superintendent, Subdivisional Officer, Subdivisional Inspector, Station House Officer. Direction and control. While the police ultimately functioned under the Inspector General of Police Administrative and Professional Command, the general control and direction of the police was under the District Magistrate, a civil servant of the rank of Deputy Commissioner, belonging to the District Management Group of Federal Civil Services and responsible to the Provincial Chief Executive, that is, the Chief Minister, through the Home Secretary of the provincial government. Section 4 of the Police Act 1864 placed the police under the administrative, technical, financial, professional and organizational control of the district superintendent of police, but subject to the lateral general control and direction of the district magistrate. The district magistrate was not a police professional but a general administrator whose powers included not only the executive functions, that is, revenue collection, but some judicial functions as well. This was done deliberately because the functioning of the district magistrate as the chief officer of the district was considered essential for the maintenance of British rule in India. The British had realized that to perpetuate their rule in the country, they must have a police force that was totally subservient to the executive. Thus, a system of dual control at the district level was introduced. One under the head of the police force in the district and the other under the chief executive of the district magistrate, who was also responsible for the criminal administration of the district. There was considerable opposition to the system of dual control at the district level, even when it was introduced. In fact, the British government realized that the district system would not work efficiently in metropolitan areas which faced different police problems. Therefore, the commissionerate system of policing based on the London Metropolitan Police model was introduced in certain metropolitan areas like Calcutta, Bombay, Madras and Hyderabad. Under this system, the responsibility for policing the city metropolis was vested in the Commissioner of Police. This component included the job specifications of A. Inspector General, B. Range Deputy Inspector General, C. District Superintendent, D. Subdivisional Officer, and E. Station House Officer. 1. Inspector General of Police as defined by Bombay Police Manual 1927. 1. The Inspector General directed his attention especially to the internal economy and efficient working of the police force and to the registration and investigation of crime throughout the presidency, for which purpose he inspected from time to time the registers and records in the various police offices. 2. The general orders which the Inspector General of Police was empowered to make were as under. A. Every police officer held his office subject to a condition of efficiency, physical, mental, and moral for the due and satisfactory performance of his duties. B. Every police officer held his office subject to a condition of efficiency, physical, mental, and moral for the due and satisfactory performance of his duty duties. C. It was of paramount necessity that officers of government, both European and Indian, displayed courtesy, tact, and good temper in their dealings with the people with whom they were brought into daily contact. The possession of these qualities had a significant bearing upon their conduct. Manifestations of grave defects of temper and repeated loss of self control were regarded as constituting inefficiency. This section did not need all cases and issues to be submitted to government for approval, but the Inspector General of Police was to submit for their previous approval any general orders involving radical and important changes which the Inspector General of Police had proposed under that section. Otherwise, all orders on matters of routine or of an unimportant nature were issued by the Inspector General of Police without reference to government. 3. The Inspector General had control over the District Superintendent in respect of his personal movements and duties, subject to the provisions of Deputy Inspector General of Police. Number 2. Deputy Inspector General of Police as defined by Bombay Police Manual 1927. 1. The Deputy Inspector General of Police performed such of the duties of the Inspector General of Police and exercised such control as was from time to time delegated to him either by government or by the Inspector General of Police in respect of such powers as it might be within the latter's competence to delegate. 2. The administration came within the sphere of the Inspector General of Police was also be subject to the control of the Deputy Inspector General of Police of the range concerned, so far as the latter officer had been empowered to exercise such control in respect of such matters. 3. It was the duty of each Deputy Inspector General to maintain by frequent personal inspection the efficiency and discipline of the police force under his charge, to be in close touch with the superintendents of police of his range and ready to assist or control them, to establish uniformity of procedures, harmonious cooperation between districts and between the police and magistracy, to supervise carefully the prevention, registration, investigation, and detection of crime occurring within his jurisdiction. He was responsible that all necessary measures were taken by the police for the prevention and detection of crime in his range, and particularly that adequate arrangements were made for dealing with any unusual outbreak of crime, that the investigation of serious cases was properly supervised, and that gazetted officers played an adequate part in this work. He would seek rather to encourage, instruct, and advise the superintendents of police than to find fault, and would be careful neither to supersede them in their proper function, nor to interfere unduly in their relations towards their subordinates. Whenever neglect or want of system or divergence from order was observed, the Deputy Inspector General pointed out to the Superintendent of Police the proper method of conducting the duty and the latter, without delay or demur, carried out the instructions given. Any differences of opinion was submitted to the Inspector General of Police subsequently. Number 5. Superintendents of police treated the Deputy Inspector General confidentially and frankly and gave him confidentially all the difficulties and about all shortcomings in the police work of their districts. The Deputy Inspector General paid special attention to the training of Assistant and Deputy Superintendent of Police serving within his range and the supervision of training schools. Finally, number 6, finally, the Deputy Inspector General remained in close touch with the commissioners and district magistrates about the maintenance of peace and prevention and detection of crime in their respective divisions and districts. Communications with commissioners ordinarily were of a demi-official or unofficial character. Those with district magistrates were ordinarily through the superintendent of police. The Deputy Inspector General, when visiting the headquarters of a district, made a point of seeing the commissioner and the district magistrate. Number 7. The Deputy Inspector General was responsible for the maintenance of the discipline amongst officers and men. He was kept promptly apprised of all serious cases of misconduct among officers and men occurring in his range, and he was responsible for guiding and directing the efforts of superintendents in dealing with such cases, for scrutinizing their reports, and for making personal inquiries in cases where the matter so demanded. Number 8. Deputy Inspector General of Range made a thorough inspection of the headquarters of all the districts in their range once a year. They also inspected every subdivision in their range once in 2 years with special regard to the work of circle inspectors and subdivisional police officers. 9. Each Deputy Inspector General used to send to the Inspector General of Police a copy of his tour program a week before he started on tour and kept him informed of any changes in the program which it might be necessary to make from time to time. Number 10. Deputy Inspector General did not issue any orders to, nor did they prescribe any returns or forms to be prepared or submitted by superintendents of police of the districts in their range without the previous sanction of the Inspector General of Police. Number 3. District Superintendents of Police as defined by Bombay Police Manual 1927. 1. The direction and regulation of the police throughout a district vested in the District Superintendent of Police as executive head of the force, under the command and control of the district magistrate, who did not ordinarily interfere in the internal organization and discipline of the police force. Number 2. The Superintendent of Police considered it a part of his duty, as far as possible, to give the subdivisional officers the benefit of his personal guidance and instruction whenever necessary. 3. As the chief police officer of the district, the primary duties of the Superintendent of Police were to keep the force under his control properly trained, efficient, and contented, and to ensure by constant supervision that the prevention, investigation, and detection of crime in his district were properly and efficiently dealt with by the police force under his command. He was therefore in a position able to get to know all officers and men serving under him, and saw that they were properly trained to enforce discipline and redress grievances, if any, to encourage men who were promising and to weed out those who were of no use to the people, to ascertain their needs generally and remain constantly in touch both with his subordinates and with the public. 4. It followed that he was free to tour the whole of his district systematically and regularly. And it was essential that he would inspect every police station and outpost in his district once a year. Also, that he would halt these places sufficiently long to enable him to get a thorough grasp of local conditions and crime and a full knowledge of his subordinates' work. Number 5. The superintendent of police dealt with crime as a whole, studying the criminal problems of the district rather than visiting spasmodically scenes of offences, a duty which more properly fell within the subdivisional officer. The superintendent of police visited the scenes of really serious offences where organized gangs were at work, as well as offences which affected markedly the general peace of the district. Number 4. Subdivisional officers as defined by Bombay Police Manual 1927. Number 1. An assistant superintendent of police or deputy superintendent of police in charge of subdivision was responsible for all crime work in his charge and visited all scenes of serious offences as were laid down in standing orders. Under the general orders of the superintendent of police, he was responsible for the efficiency and inspections of police stations and outposts in his charge at regular intervals. Number 2. He was vested with the following general powers: A. To grant casual leaves to all head constables and constables in his division, and other leave to head constables and constables in his division up to maximum of 3 months, subject to proportion laid down by the superintendent of police. Applications for leave other than casual leave were to be submitted through the superintendent's account office, where the leave asked for could be checked with the service sheet and noted on as admissible or not. B. To award extra drill to constables up to 7 days. C. To hold and write up department proceedings recommending a suitable punishment. The proceedings to be submitted to the superintendent of police for final order. D. To hold orderly room. E. To investigate the loss of arms and ammunition and to preside over committee proceedings held in that connection. F. To condemn articles of clothing and accoutrements. 3. In addition to the above, the subdivisional officers was responsible for the inspection of public conveyances playing for hire in their charges, including motors, inspection of explosives and arms and ammunition shops, musketry practices, etc., and the many other duties that fell to the lot of a subdivisional officer in the ordinary course of his work. 5. Station House Officer as defined by the Punjab Police Rules 1934. The officer in charge of police station was orderly sub-inspector. Within the limits of the police station jurisdiction, he was primarily responsible for the effective working, management, good conduct, and discipline of the local police, for the restoration of peace and the prevention and detection of crime, the due performance of all police duties, the exercise by the police of the powers granted them by law, the correctness of all registers, records, and reports prepared by them, and the direction, instruction, and efficiency of all police subordinates in the station jurisdiction were matters for which the officer in charge of a police station was essentially answerable. It was the duty of number two. It was the duty of the officer in charge of a police station to acquire detailed and accurate local knowledge to secure the whole heated cooperation of his zaildars, inamdars, village headmen, and chokidars, encouraging them to give him information, to assist him in his work, and to range them loyally on the side of the administration. Through them and his own subordinates, he was required to keep a strict watch over all known bad characters, and he communicated all intelligence of his superiors and to other police stations without delay. 3. Within the limits of his charge, he was the chief investigating officer, and as such, he conducted all investigations in person so far as circumstances permitted. His responsibility in this matter was carefully maintained. Should it be necessary, owing to the absence of the sub inspector, should satisfy himself by pursuing the case diary and questioning the investigating officer that the investigation had been fully and properly conducted, should remedy what was defective, and took over the investigation as soon as he was free to do so, except in a case originally investigated by an assistant sub inspector where he was guided by rule. When present, number 4, when present at the police station, he personally supervised the routine work of the station house and carefully to saw that there were no areas of correspondence and that the accounts were correct. This was the legacy of the British that Pakistan got from its inspection.